So why don't we get started? We have a quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order and do roll call. Sinya,
Present.
Nia,
Present.
Lauren,
Here.
and Ben. I'm here. Any agenda changes, requests, or deletions?
No.
No. No oral communications. And we'll have approval of our meeting, the meeting from September 17th, and have a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. Any changes, deletions, or additions to the minutes? Hey, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. And we have one action item. And thank you all for attending. This is very quick, but this is something I think we needed to do and get out of the way. And it's about public art micro grants. And this is something that we wanted to do and get out, especially in front of council before they meet on October 5th about suspension of funding for the public art program. So Elise, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We do have a small PowerPoint to show some examples.
Okay. Great.
Kinds of things we're talking
Oh,
about.
beautiful.
And we're not really looking at more permanent murals right now, but it is an image I did want to share. This is from Venice Beach. And this actually was done pretty early in COVID. And anyway, so I did want to share that as an initial image. So let's go to the next slide. I also wanted to share a little bit of the research. I shared digitally a link to this study that was done during the COVID lockdown between April and May. And it was a survey that had over 124,000 respondents. And there were a couple key pieces here that I wanted to pull. I'm eagerly awaiting the next version of this data to see how it may have shifted as COVID went on longer. Mm-hmm. But in looking at what kinds of things people are doing during lockdown. And so they're doing something creative, you know, baking being one of them, but you see a lot of other things: creative writing, photography, singing, making things by hand. So people are, you know, sort of scratching that itch and that in this time by doing something different, something new. Let's go to the next slide. And this one I felt like was really important. So ideally, what would arts and cultural organizations can help your community do during this crisis? And it's really evident that people need a way to stay connected in this socially distanced world and to laugh and relax. You know, getting some sort of distraction, some sort of escape during this crisis. Mm-hmm. So those were two key pieces. I sent you the much larger document. This is from La Placa Cohen. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there, but those two slides seem to really pertain to what we're talking about today. When we talk about microgrants, you know, what does that mean? What does that look like? So we've been looking at the models in Santa Monica and West Hollywood, primarily. West Hollywood is very low budget, fast. I think their cap is at $599. Santa Monica, I think, is between $1,000 and $12,000. But those are really more focused on artists and not necessarily just getting the ball rolling with some interesting projects that could be a broader definition of artists. And that's kind of the direction we're looking here, but I would love to hear more of your input on that. So, you know, we're talking about projects that will help with the emotional and economic recovery. So projects that could go both in the commercial districts and near them, but also ways where, you know, a neighbor might be able to do a project on their street and in their community and help build more of those connections and some creativity and hopefully some joy. So this is an example of an artist, Miguel Marquez. He goes by Miguel Marquez Outside on Instagram. But he does these funny interventions, creating sort of like gallery labels and reviews for overlooked spaces in public. And the piece on the right is also him. And the one on the left, you may have seen these before, the fairy doors. They're very small installations, sometimes in the crack of a building, or it'll look like a fake facade at the front of the building. Sometimes there's lawn chairs out front. Other times people tend to do these kinds of micro installations in parks at the bases of trees and other things like that. So thinking really small, like things that would have to be discovered, and also thinking about, our commercial corridors and our businesses. What about some of the vacant storefronts? So local artists could either follow the model on the left in doing something in a temporary paint, or perhaps partner with a property manager or business owner to do something that's more robust. And these are examples that were just emailed to me this week by a San Francisco artist named Josh Katz. Some of the projects that he has done recently. So on the left, you can see he's painted this outdoor dining area for a restaurant, which is something that could fulfill a need for one of our local restaurants. And also the idea of having some sort of temporary mural that's on a panel that could be temporarily installed somewhere. So that could be another example. And then these are actually images I pulled offline from the weekly. On the right is the Palo Alto Arts Festival. And one of the big draws for people every year are these amazing large chalk drawings. So something like that could happen. I was trying to look at our own examples of kind of our home talent and thinking about the Lift Up Local initiative and how we can really encourage the creative minds that are here to do these kinds of projects and support them in a small way. The one on the left, the tree on the left is an example. There were a couple of community members, I believe it was on Bryant Street for a number of years. They decorated a couple of trees there. And this was one example of one of those installations. And members of the community love to, ride their bikes and go see how they changed over seasons and what kind of new decorations or what the new theme was. So that's just one example of that from here in Palo Alto. And also thinking about our performing artists. So actors, extremely hard hit, musicians, there could be porch front performances. There could be pop-up, very short performances in commercial corridors or other places in parks. We would have to make arrangements to make sure that it's all in keeping with county guidelines, with safety guidelines, but we wanted to make room for, what if there's a spoken word artist, someone wants to do a poetry slam, something to that effect, that this could also support those creative outlets as well, and not just visual art. And so some of the more practical things, maybe working with a business who tends to have a queue out the line of their door, and they want to work with an artist to have something that's a little bit more original or something fun or different. So that's another avenue. And then of course, the whimsical ones, they personally get to me, but there could be installations that are done either with some sort of vinyl or adhesive, and then just the steaks and the kebabs are just a funny intervention. So thinking about ways where people can find a little bit of joy. And then here are examples of painted K-rails on the right. And I believe that is through Santa Monica. And then the out of commission parking meters. Again, just thinking about whimsy. And don't forget your knitters and crocheters. So on the left is a big project in New York City that took place across multiple parks. On the right, again, sort of playing with existing infrastructure in a new and playful way. And really focusing on those connections in the community as well. So on the left, an example of a puzzle template that was on a fence, and neighbors in the neighborhood each made different parts to the puzzle. And then on the right is our own cast artist, Martha Sakalario, who got permission from various neighbors around her home to temporarily place these images on the outside of the house. So making room for all different kinds of expression, whether somebody, had a different poem available outside their home each day for a takeaway or just visible. This could go so many different directions, and there's so many creative minds here in Palo Alto. It would be fascinating to make sure that each project, even if it's more ephemeral, is captured, and then all those are collected together so that there can be a space where if you miss the installation, you can still see documentation of it, but more interestingly, seeing a more 360 picture of the creative minds that are here in Palo Alto and what kinds of projects that were undertaken to make those connections. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all for questions or discussion.
Hey,
thank
Elise,
you,
it's Sonia.
Sonia, go ahead.
Yeah, so some of particularly the earlier, some of the micro grant projects that you shown inspired this thought. I think the goal is to bring people out, right? And I was wondering, a few years ago, there was that game, Pokemon Go, and people were able to do some type of, they're able to post sites and people can play Pokemon Go. And I'm wondering if there are platforms like that where we can announce, we can sort of add these sites to a Pokemon Go like treasure hunt to invite people to go and bring people out to tour different parts of Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
That could be fun.
Absolutely.
And I can already see the press release, right? Like announcing this Pokemon Go treasure hunt exercise to bring people to different parts of Palo Alto. I mean, that would, discover these micro grants, discover these, special places of delight. Look at the gifts that we have left behind for you.
Mm-hmm.
So Elise, I have a quick question and a question. Tanya had a comment to your comment. So first of all the artists that were chosen, I guess, for these mini grants in Southern California, were they local, specifically local artists? Is my first question. And then Sinya, I just wanted to comment, thank you for all your thoughts. I think we want to bring people out, but I also want to be personally clear that I think we also want to make sure that people are safe and reminding them.
Right. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking about like Pokemon Go, and because it's a treasure hunt situation, right? So like families and small groups of friends are literally coming out. You could all wear masks. I mean, it's not like a mass spreading event, but it will take people to different areas, and it would, it's like, let's say you have like 5 different things, and the family could be out on an outing literally with their own masks out, So I don't think it's like, it's not a rally, right? Because people can do it in their own time.
Right. And
it's not a rally, quote unquote, you know what I mean?
All within the guidelines of safety and the county guidelines, of course.
Yeah, because it's not time, like, it's not like you have to be there at 1:30. It's, anytime you go.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner Taylor, to your question about local, yes, they are for local artists from those communities. I've spoken to some of my colleagues in other cities who are looking at very similar sort of micro grants supporting the artists in their communities. One of the questions that I would love to get some feedback from you all on is in thinking about, okay, so Palo Alto residents, but what about the people who come to Palo Alto? They have a different connection here and may be here every day.
Yes,
So I hate to just say, well, it's only for Palo Alto or East Palo Alto. What about
absolutely.
someone who comes in every day and may have a great idea for a creative project, and they're
Yep.
very much part of the fabric?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I totally agree. And that's why I was
Yeah.
wondering what's the,
And frankly, I would really want to make sure they are highlighted. And that's because of the special demographics within Palo Alto. Like 50, our population doubles in the daytime, and I think we should really be very welcoming to that. For that other half of the population that comes in the daytime and contribute to this population base.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments?
I'll just throw out there, how many of these are we considering doing, and how much would we like to offer the people who apply? What are your thoughts on that?
So my initial thinking is that this is a phase one. And so starting, with something that's very in keeping with the Uplift Local, something that's very modest. And then based on the feedback we get from that, the commission may decide, let's do a round two, let's scale it up, let's change the focus, something else.
Right.
But my initial thinking was, don't go quite as low as the $599 model, but perhaps it's 1,000 per.
Good.
And by the time you say maybe 60% is in commercial corridors, and Midtown should be included in that, and the rest are in neighborhoods, it'll be pretty spread out. So
Yeah.
my initial
I
thinking
agree.
was to perhaps roll out 40 or so of these.
How fun would that be? That would be amazing.
It's super exciting. Really.
Super exciting. And that's why I was thinking like a Pokemon Go type of project. Like I can just see the press release. I can see how we can put it out on the website or some type of treasure hunt event. And of course we're going to put all the, make sure, only go with your friends and everyone put on a mask, whatever, the social precautions. But it's really, it just will be a really good way to get people to go outside of the 2 blocks that they're circulating.
Any other comments or questions? One comment I have is this is that thing of discovery. You turn the corner and you find something it's just out of place and it brings a smile to your face. So I think that's part of it. And even more so that when people go out to look at these things, then it's part of, they may eat out. They may eat at some place. So you're stimulating the economy that way. You're bringing
Yeah.
it into the economy.
Well,
So
it builds community.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't
Yeah.
so Ben,
Yeah.
when you made that comment, it made me think for a second that, we typically do like a press release. And I'm wondering if this something, just thinking on a little bit of a larger scale, but just thinking outside the box, maybe this is something where we don't announce it and we're surprising people and then having people like write about it places or like talk about it. I think that's an interesting idea of having it
Yeah.
be, do we just let it, because normally we tell people like, come here or check these out, but maybe we want to do something where it's a surprise and we want people to check it out for themselves.
Yeah.
That's a good point, but the artist call will be kind of the kickoff for that. But not everybody's, in the artist call. So, it'd be a small segment that would have the artist call and be aware of what's going on. But otherwise, overall, I think it would be that discovery.
And I still think if we announce it and post it on the website, people are still discovering, even though it's on Instagram, then that someone's like, oh, where is that? And goes to try to find that, because we do want it to be out there. And I think this really builds community, because I actually ride my bike over to those 2 trees on Bryant to see what they put up.
I love that. Yeah, I love
just
that.
different, and when we were working on the tunnel, I'd make a point to ride over to look at that tunnel all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it brings people out into new neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I think there are different opportunities to roll them out. So like obviously if we're spending the money, we should make sure that we we affirmatively state that, hey, this is out there, right? So that's your first layer of audience. And maybe at some point you could do like what I was suggesting, some version of treasure hunt of something. And that again introduces the population. And it's almost by framing it as a treasure hunt, that's a reuse, right?
Yeah, and it's very fun.
And then that population can then introduce people, right? It's an educational tour.
And I believe the funding from this is going to come out of the 1% from Muni Art. Is that right? From the Muni projects? Is that right, Elise and Yanya?
Yes, that's the intent right now, that it would be Muni funds.
Right. And so what better way to use our Muni funds to get people out in their neighborhoods, drive them to the commercial corridors? I mean, I think it's a great use of our funds too. So.
And frankly, if it's going to be a micro grant, I'm just wondering if this is something, and this is something that one of the, was it Harriet? I think she was also, applying to be on the commission. And she had this idea of somehow cross-pollinating with East Palo Alto. And so if we're going to do an initiative with micro grant, and something where we're dropping little jewels over the community, being that the budget is relatively approachable, maybe we can ask if East Palo Alto is interested in also participating in something like this, and then we can summarize it in some type of, again, I hate to indoctrinate, but some type of treasure hunt or some type of event.
I certainly hope we'll get artists from East Palo Alto and our surrounding areas. I can't remember when we did What's Your Truth, the Truth Bubble, and we wanted to have both cities involved. There was a limit to that, and I can't remember. I mean, anyone was invited to tell their truth. I'm not sure the specifics on that, Elise, or not yet.
What kind of duration of each project are you thinking about? 2 or 3 months, 6 months, a month?
That's an excellent question, because some of them may be performance-based, they may be very fleeting. If someone says, I'm going to perform, 2 songs on it 8 different times over the course of a month, it's going to be very fleeting. I think the installations depends on where they're going, because if they have to get permission from the property owner, they are going to have to navigate that with the property owner. With the city, depending on the project, we can reach out to our partners and find out what's feasible, what's not. We would like for these projects, of course, to have a little longer impact, but we recognize that they're going to be quite temporary, which is why I'm thinking we also want to make one of the requirements that it's well documented so that it can live on in a digital format as well.
Okay, and then so let's say 3 months down the line after these projects start, is that when an evaluation period would start, and then possibly then thinking about another phase of the projects?
Well, I would think that as this rolls out, based on the feedback and the questions we get from artists and from, partners who are, willing to allow projects to take place on their property, I think that feedback will really help us navigate where we want to go with that second rev. And I don't know that it has to wait for 3 months. So I think we just have to see how this pilot goes with these initial ones, and then take that information and then figure out where we want to go from there.
And then did we discuss the size of the micro grant? Like $1,000 or?
Yeah.
I recommend $1,000, but I'm open.
Okay, I think $1,000 sounds good in the beginning, and we can.
Ben, sorry.
Now, which I didn't realize this, but East Palo Alto is actually in San Mateo County. I didn't realize
You all
that.
see me?
And so,
Yes. Hi, Ian.
Hi, hi.
so does that being in a different county have pose any problems with having to do with grants and that sort of stuff there?
Not for application. I think we can't put the artwork in the other city or county. Like it, anyone, the artists or people can apply from other counties, but I think the artwork has to stay within our city. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ian, go
Hey,
ahead.
yes.
Sorry, and apologies for being late. Elise, were you talking about the 40 as the first round or 40 total?
40 is a first round.
40 is the first round. And I get the geographic distance. First of all, it's obviously an immense amount of staff work, but I'm glad that that number appeals to you guys because we trust you that it means it's doable. And to make something felt in particular 3 different geographies, 3 different commercial districts at 60%, you certainly need a significant number. That makes sense to me too. I would just also, I think, make the point that I think if we spend 40,000, like this would be quite noticeable. That's a fair number of pieces. When they're going up, they're noticeable. I mean, that's part of the point. But I do think we would want to make sure that we had, I mean, as we navigate the sort of surprise and delight of turning the corner, we are going to have to explain, and I think it's part of our priorities for this year, how this serves ends in the community. Because sometimes you can put one piece that costs a lot of money, it comes out of muni percent, and no one ever asks a question except for the one person who looked at the budget, and how the budget works is wonky. And so if we say it's already there and we're spending it, but if it looks like we're just sort of saturating Palo Alto with public art at a moment where public services are also being cut back, I think that the relationship between the saturation and the ends of helping our restaurants, helping our museums, our galleries, and also building community writ large, making clear those connections becomes all the more important. Or else it just seems like we're willy-nilly out there doing this, naive to the larger pressures.
That's so smart. That's mission driven, right? That we're supporting uplift. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And Elise, this is Sonia. I mean, I wonder if we can, I mean, clearly the way I envision it is there will be a press release kind of announcing this, clarifying it, explaining it. And then also like, I know we have these short temporary art, and I know this, but this is not coming out of the temporary art budget, but we could probably reference something like we have these temporary art that is concentrated in only this area of Palo Alto, and we want to spread this out and bring delight and democratize delight in all different areas of Palo Alto. And that may be a good way of explaining it, so people can kind of refer to that. Sorry, my cat.
Absolutely.
I was going to say you have to hold her up or him up because we hear him, but we can't see him.
But really thinking about this as, supporting the community. So in emotional and economic recovery. And so that's in line with Uplift Local. It really dovetails nicely with these other citywide initiatives that are taking place.
So Elise, with that, I'm gonna bring back again the reason why I was kind of asking the question about where were the artists from that were chosen, because I think it would be nice if possible if we do think of a percentage maybe of artists that are in the area that we're saying we're supporting the artists in our community. And then also, of course, I agree that it should also be people who have a connection to, and it could be a couple of people who have no connection, but really want to think that if they do something in Palo Alto, they'll become big stars, who knows? But I think it's something to think about. And then I have a question too about like, are we doing a traditional panel? Or is it just gonna be, you guys make the calls?
I think what we'll do is we'll have a very abbreviated panel. The application process will essentially be a letter of interest and description of the project. So keeping it very simple so that we can move forward swiftly with it is the idea. So yeah, we would have a small panel.
Hey, anything else? Any other questions, comments? Anything?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I would on the question about the panel. I would make the case that at every step along the way, whether it's in the call or in the panel, when the folks convene, if they do it convening over virtually, that we have the 3 priorities and perhaps even more importantly, the uplift local at the forefront. And so the people who are applying know the ends that we're pursuing with this, and that as the selection process goes through, that they can always refer back to it. I think that the keep it. I don't worry. I mean, we are in the business of letting things get outside of spaces. That's in part what creativity and art's about. But in this case, in particular, at this moment, this would seem to be a good time to keep the eye on said local initiative balls. Terrible phrase, but anyway.
I love it. Like stamp, uplift logo everywhere.
That's a good
That'd be
point,
great.
Ian. I think that's how we need to frame this, is that how is it to help the community? It's not the how and the why, it's not the why, but how. So how do we do this? So I think that's a good point to frame it in that sense about COVID-19 recovery and also the financial impact that it has on.
Yep.
Yeah, which is our number 1 priority.
Yeah. I think those 2 words would really refocus and reiterate and reinforce. It would be great. Good input, Ian.
Hey, any other comments or questions, anything? Okay, can I have a motion? And I think we want to include a dollar amount for this to, in the motion to move this forward.
Can I just ask one more question, Elise? Because you saw $5.99, you said like 1,000. Is there any reason why we shouldn't have 2 tiers or maybe multiple tiers of pricing, or like one for $5.99, one for $10.99? Well, I don't know, because I'm a grocery shopper. I always think we need to have multiple tiers. Maybe it doesn't work.
That's a great question. I think for this initial pilot, we were just trying to keep it simple, because when you have different tiers, then we've got to ask more budgeting questions. So for this first one, it might make sense in the second one to have 2 tiers, somebody who's doing something in their neighborhood, and then maybe we want bigger ones.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, if we find that we're only getting applicants at a certain level and we want to drop down and say, hey, we'd also like a lot of other people at 500 or 600. It's such a good idea. So this could be our test run and see how it goes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good points, all good points. So if we can have a motion to get this going. Hey, Cindy, go ahead.
Do you want to say it, Cinya? I think a lawyer would be good.
Oh, I motion. Ian, I'm gonna throw my cat's face in your screen.
Okay, I move that we use our 1% muni funds in the amount of up to $40,000 for 40 individual micro grants at $1,000 each. Is that inclusive enough, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that's good. Thank you, Mark.
I second.
All right, thank you, Cinya. Hey, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed, abstained. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I'm really stoked about this project.
I am so excited
to get it going and see what kind of response we have, and how it's going to I think it will really uplift the community. So thank you all very much.
And I think we can, I honestly think we can leverage it multiple ways, like the first time announcing it, and then maybe creating some type of treasure hunt, again, iterating it if people don't are not aware of it the first time. So I think there are multiple ways that we can highlight it and bring it to people's attention and use it. It will be, I think it could be really fun.
All right, that's a good point. All right, thank you. And next on any announcements. Next meeting will be October 15th. Thank you all for giving your time tonight to attend this special meeting. I think this was important to move this forward so Elise and Nadia can move forward with this and get this going, and really just help the community. So thank you all for attending tonight. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the 15th for our next meeting.
Bye, Ian.
Bye, Kat.
Bye. Thank you.